What's up, Digilogue fam? It's your boy Drew. Um, we're obviously, here, episode 5 of the L's podcast, aka Lessons Learned. Before we start, just want to just say, we hope everyone is staying safe and healthy at home. We obviously have pivoted in terms of our content, in terms of our live events. So super happy and supportive that you guys are obviously supporting our content and resources. But before we start, I just wanted to say thank you to obviously the team for putting this together. And we also have a special guest today, one of my friends and coworkers, J.R. McKee.
What's up?
Happy
Shout out Digilogue.
Sunday.
Shout out Drew.
First off, before we start on what you do, how are you doing? Like, obviously we talk every day, but
Yeah,
what's quarantine life for you?
I think I'm on week 7. I started a little earlier than everybody because my dad's in the military, so he kind of drilled down on us. So I'm in week 7 now, and it's been a roller coaster. You know what I mean? It started off smooth, then after so long, you get a little depressed, and then you got to talk yourself back into it. So you know what I mean? Right now, I'm at a high. You know what I mean? I'm at the peak of a roller coaster. Hopefully, I keep going up.
100%. I think that's important because I feel like regardless of like what you do, I think the mental aspect of this is super important. I think, those daily quarantine check-ins, rather than texting people, more so just FaceTiming them and just seeing how they're doing I think can go a long way. So I definitely appreciate that from my friends and like obviously my peers. But before we start, maybe introduce yourself. So we obviously work together. So I do digital marketing at Alamo. And then maybe talk about a little about your role, but also what else you do outside of that.
Well, overall, I'm a music executive, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm an investor. My role at Alamo, I'm head of digital sales and revenue, which basically means I interface with the digital service providers, DSPs, such as Apple, Spotify, YouTube, just to name a few. And my role is just to basically make sure we're getting the best representation on those platforms and that we're heavily integrated into the playlist on those platforms.
Right. Yeah, that's super important. And for those obviously who are artists who are familiar with DSPs, those are like Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora,
Anywhere you're selling the music digitally.
And yeah, that's super important, particularly for an artist that's either just breaking into the scene, but also for an artist that's obviously well known. The idea of pitching playlists is it's going to jumpstart the music and obviously the campaign for that album or single. So it's super key.
Exactly. Very important to the sales.
100%. And then in terms of management, you also manage an artist as well.
Yes, I manage Jacob Lattimore, the singer, actor. I've been managing him for almost 5 years now. I think we started November of 15. So yeah, almost 5 years now. My background, I have a production company and a management company. I've been running it for 15 years. Successfully sold over about 10 million records thus far.
That's amazing. And obviously the great thing about this podcast is really just to kind of dig deep into how you got started, because a lot of people, they see people in our positions and they're like, wait, how did you get there? A lot of people don't realize there's so many ups and downs, to your point, like a roller coaster, to either starting things on your own, things failing, restarting, pivoting, which is super key to just really translate, because a lot of people see the success, they want it fast, but they don't realize what it takes to not only get there, but also sustain it.
Yeah, no, like I said, 15 years, and this is my first time working inside a label. I've always worked for myself up until this point. But it started a long time ago, and my job is a relationship-based job. You know what I mean? I have relationships with all these people, editorial staff and marketing staff inside those DSPs that I had before I had this job. I wouldn't have got this job without having those relationships, and those were built over a long time of just being in the industry. And normally what happens with progression is the people that are your friends, as long as they stick to it, eventually those are the people that are in position. And that's what happened here. The people that are in position at these DSPs, I've known them before they were in that position, the same way they know me before I was in this position.
Right. No, that's super important. I think you hit something super important to obviously to note, is the relationship aspect that we constantly obviously drill down to people to make sure that people don't, they don't mismanage those relationships. You know,
Yeah.
because you just never know. It might be an intern of yours that you mistreated or like misspoke to,
No,
and all
no,
of a sudden,
everybody great. Because you never know. I mean, like I said, every person that's in position,
right?
I've known them long before they were in that position, and I never would have imagined them in that position. A lot of these things are created almost seemingly overnight. Like maybe 18 months ago, TikTok didn't matter.
Hmm.
Um, and but the person who runs the TikTok management, artist management, is a friend of mine who was once a PR. You know what I mean? I never would have knew that she was gonna end up running TikTok, because back then TikTok didn't even exist to us. And
Right.
so each of these people, you want to build true genuine relationships, because as long as they're persistent, they're going somewhere.
Mhm.
And again, that's the case across the board.
Right.
Knowing Carl Cherry from Spotify,
Right.
before Spotify even existed. Actually, I think
Mhm.
Spotify started in what, 13, if I'm not mistaken.
I think even before that, like 2011. You
Yeah.
know.
So yeah, even before I was aware what Spotify was, I was friends with Carl. You know what I
Right.
mean? Back when I believe Beats was just getting started, and he was working at Beats. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
there's just numerous of stories like that, of just people that I've always known and been friends with, that eventually are moved into a position of power. I mean, that's what we all work for, and build
Right.
these relationships for, so that we can all move into a position of power.
Right. No, it's super key to highlight, and we'll definitely like obviously go back to that in terms of like really managing those relationships over time, and not really thinking of them as like transactional relationships, but really
Yeah.
friendships of people that you can like lean on around the industry. But before we start, like, how did we want to go back into the genesis of your career, your passion for music. Where did that kind of come about? Where are you from?
Well, Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay,
Yeah,
Cleveland.
yeah,
What,
and
what
I
area
spent a
code
lot
is
of
that?
time in Mississippi. Say it again.
What area code is that?
Uh, Area code 216. 216. Yeah. So, I was basically raised there. I spent a lot of time in Mississippi though, because my mother got married and moved to Mississippi.
Mhm.
So I got to see both sides. I got to see city living, and I got to see country living. Um, so I'm pretty diverse culturally.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I think when I first met you, I thought you were from Atlanta, but you are from.
Exactly. Yeah. So I moved to Atlanta when I was 21. So going back to your question of music, music was always something that I loved. Never something that I thought I would be a part of the industry, but I was
Mhm.
always just a music lover. And so what ended up happening was the business side. I was pretty much, my father, as I mentioned earlier, is in the military. And so I was
Right.
pretty much trained, but his father instilled business into him, and he instilled business into me, but more so on like a military driven sort of like, you got to
Mindset.
read books, or you can't go outside. You got to study for this. I was forced to be a businessman. Really what I'm telling you. But yeah, so I ended up being in relationships. I'm sorry, having relationships with different artists and different producers.
Mhm.
When I was in college, ended up having
Gotcha.
relationships with a lot of artists and producers, because I was throwing parties at clubs. Which is,
Gotcha.
most people in the industry, they come from club promotion. But I was doing club promotion just as a hustle, just to make more money. I wasn't really super interested, but I just saw the opportunity to make money. And then
Right.
because of that, you start getting DJs wanting to DJ my party. You start getting artists wanting to perform at my party. And this is all my college years. And so what ended up happening is I just had great relationships with these guys. And they started to make it. They started to have records on the radio, and they ended up getting a record deal. And I was just in position as the smartest person they knew. And they were like, "Yo,
Right.
I really, want you to ride with us on this. I want you to help us out." And so in my mind, I'm thinking of it as, okay, these guys are gonna be making money. I'm a
Right.
businessman. I can show them how to invest that money. I can take it in, get them some car dealerships, get them some car washes. This is really what I was thinking at 19 years old. I get the car washes, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And this is also how I met Ty, who owns Alamo. Because he gave us a deal at Asylum Records when I was 19.
Wow.
Him and Joey IE were in the meeting, and so we started a working relationship that early. Um but yeah, so lo and behold, I found myself on the road with these artists having the time of my life.
Mhm.
As a 19-year-old, we're on the road. We had a
Yeah.
hit single, having the time of my life, and just looking at the business and seeing where the money was coming and seeing where the money was flowing. I realized that the owner of the label was the one who was keeping all the money. Um,
Mm.
and that's just always kind of been my nature. I always break down business, like, no matter what situation I'm in, I'm looking at the business. I'm looking at, how the income is made, what they do with the income, how much they invest in it. So I've always been analytical when it came to business. And so I'm just breaking down the whole industry at this point in time at 19. And I realized, hey man, if I want to make money in this industry, I need to start a label. And that's what I did. At 21, I started a label and I moved to Atlanta. Yeah.
Wow. So this is happening while you're in college between 19 and 21.
Yeah.
What
Well,
did,
no. So when we got the record deal, when Ty gave us the deal, I
uh-huh.
college. I dropped out. I dropped out because yeah,
I've learned.
my father forced me to go to college. So another caveat that I should mention, I graduated high school and
Right.
started college at 16 years old. And
Wow.
so from 16 to 19, I was in college. I was a junior in college when we got the record deal. And my
Right.
father forced me to go. I didn't want to go to college.
Mhm.
I was already making money at 16. I had already bought my first car. I was I was a natural born businessman. And so
Right.
I had several hustles going. So I was making money. So in my mind, I'm like, hey, dad, I got this. I don't need college to make money. I'm already flush with cash and I
Right.
haven't even left high school. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But he made me go. In his mind, college was the only route to success. So when we got the record deal, I left college. I was like, listen, dad, you said you wanted me to be successful. I'm
Mhm.
successful. And lo and behold, he agreed. He was like, okay, you can leave. And
Wow.
so
That's,
that
that's
ended my college career.
wow. I mean, like I said, I think when it comes to like education, obviously, I'm for it. But if there's an opportunity where you've kind of reached your ceiling and you know that you're on a road to be successful, I
Yeah.
think you have an opportunity to pivot. You should. Um,
Yeah, I took my opportunity. I got out of there. But it was a really fun time. And we
yeah.
were making a lot of money, but I think one of the mistakes, one of the lessons learned from one of those early lessons I learned was, nothing lasts forever. And so that roller coaster, I mean that high that we were on came to an end fast. We lasted on the road for about 9 months. We put out the album and things just kind of went down from there. We didn't have another hit. We would be
Mm,
what you would consider a one-hit wonder.
mm,
Um, but I had spent all of my money that I was making because in my mind, this is the beginning. This is going to last forever.
mm.
You know what I mean? So I
Right.
literally had spent it, like as I was getting it, I was spending it. You know what I mean? And we were making a lot of money, but we were spending a lot of money. And so it didn't last a year that we were back home broke. You
Oh
know?
no. Oh no. So what was that like? Because I think for a lot of people, when they first get money, they
Yeah.
feel like they need to spend it
Yeah.
to So what was it that you were spending it on? Was it more so just personal things like maybe?
Clothes mostly.
Mhm.
Because we had an apartment, but we didn't really have expenses because we lived on the road. Like the label had us traveling so much, so we didn't really have expenses, and we were also getting per diem,
Right.
which is basically a stipend for food while you're on the road. So we weren't spending money on like everyday life. We were splurging. I had all the Jordans. I had never wore Jordans before, by the way. But at this point, I had all the Jordans. I had all the money. We were in the strip club every night.
Uh-huh.
It was a life. It was a lifestyle. The girls,
All right.
it was a lifestyle. So that's basically where the money was going. And when we came home empty-handed. I hadn't saved a dime, not a
Wow.
dime. Yeah. So that was my first lesson in the music business: is that nothing lasts forever.
And it's crazy because a lot of people don't have second chances.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is like could be like the only chance that people may be able to make money.
They might
In
get
music.
that one shot. But that's also a reason why, I love being on the business side of it versus actually being in the front as an artist.
Right.
Because the artist gets one shot, maybe two, but on the business side, there's 1,000 shots. And you know what I
Right.
mean? We've shot with my production label, we've probably put out 8 to 9 artists, and 2 of them have been successful.
I mean, that's a
So
pretty good percentage. Some people just have zero.
yeah, no, I'm aware. Yeah.
It's pretty competitive. Um, Speaking about lessons learned, if you were to put yourself in that position now, let's
Mhm.
say, what would you have invested differently? So you have that money. What would you have done differently?
Put myself back in my 19-year-old position.
Yeah, knowing what you know now.
Um, Man, I mean, first of all, I didn't even know what a manager was, and I was their manager, but I didn't know that. You know what I mean? I just thought I was a homeboy.
Mhm.
So my collect the way I collected money would have been different. I didn't get paid anything off the shows that they were having. So I wasn't collecting my 20% management fee off
Gotcha.
shows. There's just a lot of money left on the table. Now that I know what a manager is.
Mhm.
And second of all, I probably would have been more involved with the label. I, Literally, I didn't have any conversations with Joey and Todd as far as like game planning and strategy and
Right.
organization. So I would have been more involved with the label. The one thing that I did do that helped launch my career was I was very good with networking.
Mhm.
Because when you're on a show, I mean, when you're on the road and you're a hot artist, you're on the road with other artists. Like you're doing shows like a radio jam. It's not just going to be you. It's going to be you and the
Right.
baby and NBA
Right.
Youngboy. And so I was so tied up with like every hot artist. Every hot artist knew who I was. You know what I mean? So I had built an amazing network
Mhm.
directly with the artists.
Right.
Um, and I use that to my advantage because when I started my label, it was also a production label where I managed producers, and
Mm.
I used that to basically all of my money from like 21 to 24 was off selling beats, and I was
Wow.
selling to the top artists in the game at that time because I met them all on the road.
That's crazy. So that's really a great, interesting point, in terms of just like looking at relationships as like currency in a sense, where
Yeah,
obviously you invest early, you never know when that opportunity will take place to like, to have a business relationship with that person, but you were able to manage that through the, while you were on the road. So you're on the road, you go back home, now you're broke.
yeah, bro, yeah, bro.
What was that thought process like? And then how did you go into like creating your production company?
um, I mean, I I knew that the producer who had made all of their music, I knew that he was the ticket. Who was my partner to this day. Me and him co-own the label. It's my partner
Mhm.
to this day. But I knew that he held all the value because there never would have been any hits without he literally produced and wrote them. So there
Mhm.
never would have been any hits without him.
Right.
And so I knew that he was the key. And so my conversation with him was very simple. If we want to make money, we have to be the label. Let's start a label and let's sign some artists. And luckily, over that time span of us being out there, this is back in MySpace days, by the way, we had built a great following on MySpace. Like we
Mm.
was talking
That's-
cash shit, like we was cash shit talkers on MySpace. So everybody in Mississippi knew who, because this all happened in Mississippi. The artists were from
Gotcha.
Mississippi. So everybody in Mississippi knew who we were. We were the hottest thing in Mississippi, and we were the only people with a hit in Mississippi. So
Right.
everybody knew who we were. So we had built up a brand,
Mm.
um, and so we used that to find the artists. And actually, we had artists blowing us up, and there was a particular artist. His name was the Joker. And he just kept blowing up my MySpace, and so I actually set up a studio in our apartment, and I was charging for studio time because I mean we had to make money. You know what I mean?
All
We're
right.
broke. We had to make money, and so I set up a studio, and I looked at all these artists who were clamoring to get to us, and I said, "Hey, if you want to meet with us, book some studio time." You know what I mean? And that's what I did. And so Joker booked some studio time, and he got in there. And I was an engineer, by the way. Just something
Really?
I had learned.
Wow.
Yeah, just something I had learned along the way.
That's good to
Yeah,
know.
yeah. No, I'm only good at home engineering. I can't get into like a real studio. Then I'm
Right. Right.
lost. Like, home
Yeah.
engineering, I got it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he was in there and he had paid us for the studio time. And I'm like, yo, this kid is so dope. And so my
Mhm.
partner's name is Big Fruit. He's a producer. I said, Fruit, like, yo, we got to work with this kid. And so we did. And really, it was just a labor of being on MySpace 24/7 that we
Mhm.
turned him into honestly the second biggest star on MySpace. It was Soldier Boy, and then it was the Joker. Most
Wow.
anybody from the South or who was tuned in on MySpace knows exactly who the Joker is. And so yeah, it was Soulja Boy, then it was the Joker. Those are the two biggest artists on MySpace. And we ended up being very successful with him.
Wow.
And that's what Line Star label.
That's crazy. So you go on this tour,
Yeah.
you spend lots of money, go broke, but you're able to like reset, go back home and build a production business, build a studio at your crib.
Yeah.
And through the obviously people knowing what you've been doing, given that you're like this known brand in Mississippi, people
Yeah.
are just coming in and you leveraging that,
Right.
taking advantage
Right.
of those marketing opportunities.
Right.
Now you found this artist who's like the next up to Soulja Boy, who's probably, during that time was probably like the biggest artist.
Yeah, he was, and we were able to leverage like a beef between the two. They were friends. They were actually friends. 'Cause I don't know if you know, but Soulja was from Mississippi as well.
No, I didn't know that.
And so they were actually friends. And what happened was, and this did happen. It wasn't made up. Soulja Boy stole Joker's flow. Like Joker and Soulja Boy were the two biggest thing on MySpace. And so they were well aware of each other. They're talking on the phone. They're really cool. And Soulja Boy came out with a song that was like word for word, flow for flow, Joker's flow, and like all Joker's fans called him out on it. And Joker was very smart. And so he was like, yo, I'm about to make a diss song. And it wasn't even because he didn't like, so they were friends. But he was like, for marketing purposes, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so we rode that beef for so long. They were going back and forth. It was great. It was great. And so yeah, so that launched us. And then what happened, I think initially, if I'm not mistaken, Joker went to jail the first time. And that's that and other circumstances. My girl was about to have a baby. I decided to move to Atlanta and start working out of Atlanta and just see if I can get the thing cracking even bigger in Atlanta. Because nobody would sign Joker for reasons unknown to me. I still don't know to this day, but we met with every label and nobody would sign us. And Joker was hot. He was on shows every weekend, $5,000 a show. Was back then, was this like 2011, 12? So that's the equivalent to maybe 8 to 10,000 now, if you think about inflation. So he's hot. Like he's all over the Midwest and the South doing shows every weekend. And we're just trying to figure out like, yo, why won't anybody sign us? You know what I mean? Like why won't they give us a deal? And so I'm living in Atlanta at this time. It had some years had passed. We were still really relevant. MySpace was still booming. Like as long as MySpace was booming, we were the shit. We were one of the biggest things on there. And so what ended up happening to move into the next step of succession was I saw a beer commercial. I believe it was a Budweiser commercial.
Okay.
And it was about two brothers. And one of them was a brewer and one of them was a marketer. And the commercial was like, you can brew it, but can you sell it? And so I saw that and I was like, damn. I was like, we're making music, but we're not selling no music. And so I started uploading Joker's his mixtapes, because all his music you can listen to it on MySpace. That was really the only platform to listen to it. MySpace and YouTube were the only platforms that you could listen to his music. And I was like, damn. And so I uploaded his mixtapes to iTunes. And the first week, without even promoting it, by the way, I never promoted it. I just uploaded it. And the first week, it was $2,500 in the account. And by the end of the month, there was 30 grand in my account. Wow. And I was like, what the fuck? I was just like, what? And by the way, we never promoted. So it was literally people who were already just searching for his music. And so by the end of the month, and from that day forward, I don't know. I've had money. Like I was broke my whole life. And from that day forward, I've never turned back. I had money since that day. That year was the year I told my dad, hey man, I'm making more than you now. I'm the leader of the family now. But yeah, I mean that was beautiful. And the next year, maybe 2 years later, I ran into Ghazi, who owns Empire at South by
Yeah.
Southwest. And Ghazi came up to me. He knew who I was. I didn't know who he was at the time. I obviously know now. But he came up to me and said, "Hey, you're JR." And I was like, "Yeah, what's going on?" And he was like, "Man, I'm Ghazi. I just started this distribution company, Empire." And he was like, "Man, I just want you to know something." He was like, "You're the first person to ever sell a mixtape on iTunes." And I was like, "Wow, I never even thought about that." And he was like, "Yeah." He was like, when I saw that, that was one of the things, because I think at the time he was working for what is the company he was working for? He was working for another distribution company before he went out and started his own.
Was
And
it
he was
Tim?
yeah, he was like, I had never seen somebody selling mixtape on iTunes until I came across you. And he was like, now it's starting to become a thing. And I was telling him, I was like, man, I had never even thought to sell music. I was like, I don't know why that never occurred to me.
Right.
Because I guess I was thinking labels make albums and albums go on iTunes. I never thought that our music could go on iTunes. Of course, now that's everybody does it, but back then it just wasn't a thing.
Right.
And I was just fortunate to see that commercial, and that commercial translated to me like, hey, you need to sell music.
That commercial.
And lo and behold, man, it was a gold mine just waiting to be tapped into.
That's crazy. You started the trend.
Yeah. It was a beautiful thing. It was a defining moment in my life for sure.
That's crazy. So obviously you have this defining moment.
Yeah.
Now that you have money coming in, what's your approach to just investing?
Well, so now that we had the money coming in, first of all, our lifestyle. Our lifestyle was a little different after that. I mean, bro, we from Mississippi, and I'm not from there, but I had been there. My mother moved me there when I was 7. So I was there from 7 to 12. And then I left and went to high school in Cleveland and came back 16 to 19. Well, really 16 to 21. So I mean, I don't know, that's like 10 years of living in Mississippi in a trailer park on a dirt road. So I mean, very, very humble guys. My partner Fruit living was very similar, so we always hope to make it big in the music industry, but when you just got a constant 30,000 hitting your account every month, that's different. You know what I mean?
For that time and now, come on.
And it's all yours. Like you don't gotta get none to no label. It's all your money.
Right.
Besides, the artists, of course. But man, we was just like, yo, like, and so we moved into a fire ass loft, a 4-story loft. You know what I'm saying? It had 4 stories. It should have had an elevator, but it didn't. Man, crazy. One of the craziest cribs in Atlanta at the time, right?
Really?
Yeah, no, really. And so, but okay, that's not important. This is what's important.
Yeah.
Joker ended up going to jail again. He had legal troubles. And so the second time he went to jail, I was like, man, I'm bored. Like I literally didn't have anything to do. Me and Fruit were making songs, selling our songs. I was writing too, by the way. I didn't mention that, but I was helping him write these records. And I had a really dope record for Roscoe Dash, who I was cool with. He was on fire at the time. And really was the only person singing, which everybody does now, is the singing rapping. And so I wrote this record for him, and I'm like, man, this would be so dope for Roscoe Dash, but I couldn't get him to come by the house. And so I'm like, yo, who else sings? And at the time, there was only one other person I knew in the city of Atlanta that actually sang, because it just wasn't a thing at the time.
Right.
And it was K-Camp. And it was K-Camp. And so we had a mutual friend, and I said, hey, man, can you get K-Camp to come by my house? And so he did. He got K-Camp to come by the house. K-Camp cut the record. He sounded beautiful. I'm like, oh, man, this shit's so fire. And I was like, same thing that happened again. I said, Fruit, we need to sign this guy. You know what I mean? And he had just made this record that ended up being a big record. It was called Do It. It was a record with him and Michael Montana. He had just made it. And so it was circulating on like the mixtapes. And I think at this time, maybe live mixtapes that came into play. Instagram had came into play at this time. But yeah, he had just made that record. And so I talked to him, and I talked to his mother, who at the time was his manager, and she kind of wanted to step back. She was like, I feel like I took it as far as I can take it. And
Right.
so I talked to her about it, and we agreed and we signed a deal. And so I signed K Camp.
Wow.
I believe 2013, if not late 2012. Um, and so I end up using that money to invest in the K Camp, and so that's how we got his career started. Um, and you know, the history on that one is
Yeah,
crazy.
that's really interesting because
A lot of hits and records sold.
yeah, no, 100%. I think I just want to point out just
Mhm.
your kind of ear for artists. You
Yeah,
know, you've had from the artists that you discovered in college that you guys
yeah,
worked with to Joker, obviously being able to like really push him, and then now K Camp, kind of knowing, how like the melodic rapping was
yeah,
fairly new at the
right.
time and really taking advantage of that. But I think want to point that out too. This
Yeah,
didn't
I
necessarily just
appreciate it.
happen. You know, you got
Yeah,
to
man.
ear.
I think breaking the artist is the exact equivalent to winning the lottery. Like it's so rare. Like it's incredibly rare. And it happens by persistence, of course, but I still think there's a lot of chance and luck that goes into an artist breaking. You know what I mean? You can work your ass off for sure. You can have as much money as you want, but it's never guaranteed. You know what I mean? There's a lot of God power that goes into breaking the artist. You can never, and no one can ever take full credit for breaking the artist. There's just too many variables.
That's a good point. That's a
Yeah.
good point. So what was it about K Camp early on, and to like really breaking him as an artist from 2013 till now?
Well, that process, at the time, I had two peers of mine, and I had saw them just recently break artists, and I
Hmm.
watched exactly how they did it. One was Charlie, who was over Street Execs, and he had Travis Porter, and so I watched him every weekend. They would go to North Carolina, and they would go to like different cities in North Carolina, and they would also blog about it. So you can see this without being there. You can look at their YouTube and you can see their progression, how they
Right.
went from nobodies to somebodies in a quick amount of time by taking advantage of the Carolinas.
Mm.
And on the other hand, K Camp's favorite rapper at the time, him and his crew, their favorite rapper was Rich Homie Quan. And so
Mm.
I hadn't really got tight with Fly Who Owns Things the Game just yet, but I knew of him and we had met before when I skipped over a part where I was A&R at Def Jam
Oh,
because
all right, there too.
I worked for Boo, who was the vice president of Def Jam. So during his whole tenure there, I was A&R under him.
Wow.
But I met Fly at that point in time. But yeah, so Rich Homie Quan was a thing that had just blew up, and K Camp and his friends were so into him, and so I was watching that from afar too, and I saw that it wasn't until a video of Rich Homie Quan performing in Chattanooga, where like they were singing his song word for word, that Atlanta embraced Rich Homie Quan. Like it
Mm.
took that video for them to care about him. And so I would, in my mind, I'm like, okay, K Camp at the time had this really big record. It wasn't his record, it was Michael Montana, and he was featured on it, but K Camp was the hook. And so everybody loved the hook. You know what I mean? Like, not even being biased, that's just the truth. Everybody loved the hook. And so I used that momentum to reach out to people in North Carolina, like, hey, I got this kid. I know you heard the record. I want to bring him through your club. And so I literally followed the Travis Porter blueprint of taking him all through the Carolinas, meeting all these DJs, building all these relationships. And because I knew if I can get them any one of these cities to sing one of Camp's song word for word on video, that's when Atlanta would embrace them. Because we had already been pushing in Atlanta for the last year and a half. You know what I mean? We've been every club, 10 deep, K Camp hoodies on. I done paid the DJs, I done paid the radio to play the record. Like I have the money, so I'm spending it. Like I'm doing everything in my power to
Mhm.
make this happen. You know what I mean? So what ended up happening is, like I said, we built all these relationships in the Carolinas, and literally, the day Money Baby came out, the day it came out, it was played on the radio in Greensboro. It was played on the radio in Charlotte. It was played on the radio in Atlanta. The day it came out, because we had been working so hard nonstop for the last year and a half, that
Right.
that and the record was so undeniable. Like the moment you heard Money Baby, you knew. I don't care a DJ. I don't care if you're a fan. a consumer, whatever. The moment you hear this record, it's over with. You know what I mean? And so literally the day we put it out, I sent it to everybody. They was playing it that day. And I don't know how long between that time and us booking the show in Greensboro, maybe a month tops. Couldn't have been longer than 30 days. We booked the show in Greensboro. It might have been for, I don't remember. It was under 5,000, whatever it was. It was under 5,000. So I said, listen, if I get this on camera of them singing this song, we're out of here. It's over with. You know what I mean? And so I had my camera crew ready. We went up there. Camp hit the stage, and sure enough, word for word, they sung Money Baby. I dropped that video on YouTube, and it was like the rest was history. We were out of here from that moment. We blew up with Money Baby. We cut her off. Before we signed to Interscope, we were the largest independent artist in the country. We had 2 records in the top 30 on radio, completely independent. There was no independent artist larger than us at that point in time. And we had every single label at our fingertips. And honestly, I think I went with Interscope for 2 reasons. I had a great relationship with Tunji that I had just met him because of this. I had a great relationship with him. My history with Joey IE signing us back at Asylum, and just honestly the legacy of Interscope. I thought this is where superstars come from. And so that's why I wanted to sign with Interscope. And so we did a joint venture with Interscope. We had a good amount of leverage, so we didn't have to sign as an artist or anything. We signed as a joint venture profit share with my label Interscope. Yeah.
That's important to note. And I think to your point, just to kind of just go back to what you talked about with K-Camp, especially for artists now, where you really put the groundwork for about 1.5 years, right? Whether it's, it wasn't just about releasing music, but really hitting the ground, from person to person, and really hitting the markets you felt like we're going to be able to like translate with shows. So like obviously Atlanta, that's hometown. You got to hit Atlanta. And then you saw what was happening in Carolinas and really kind of following that blueprint.
Right.
And to your point with Rich Homie Quan, taking a video where you see the interaction where like sometimes a home city may not necessarily engage with you until cities support you.
Then they oh man, he big. We got to jump on board. And that's what Rich Homie Quan, and that's what happened with K-Camp.
It sounds about right. I mean, I feel like that always happens with a lot of artists.
Yeah.
With just they'll see you perform in New York, and all of a sudden, wait,
Right.
you in New York? Hold up, where can I find this music? That's really cool. And then to your point too, as you're doing this independently, being in a position now where now you're going to a label, but you have more leverage, but also be able to define your terms where now it's more so a JV, a joint venture, and having the support of a bigger label, but still being able to be creatively independent.
And I give a lot of credit to Joey for that, because he really never blocked anything. He let me pick all the records. He never, tried to have any sort of overbearance on the creative side of it or even the marketing side of it. I handled all of the marketing in conjunction with the team there, of course. It was a great relationship. It still is a great relationship.
Yeah.
And also how I got to Alamo. Man. So yeah.
It's interesting like how that journey is just like to like where you are now. So you have the success with this record with K-Camp. Where do you go from here? Like what's happening during this time? Where are some like maybe some lessons that you're kind of experiencing with this newfound success?
Well, I can tell you some of my mistakes that I made during that time. One of the things that I do consider, I don't know if it's a mistake, but something that two things I wish I would have done during that time. One is I sort of kept to myself. We had our own little umbrella, and we were highly successful. One of the most successful new artists at that time, because we put out 6 back-to-back gold and platinum records. So we were doing phenomenal, but I wasn't necessarily reaching out to other executives, other managers of other artists. Like I wasn't building a larger network. as much as I could have been. Like, you know, some of my friends would tell me like, yo, you should hang with this person, or you should meet this person. And I didn't care to, you know what I mean? I'm like, nah, I'm good. Like, we doing great. I don't think I need them, but it's not about needing them. It's about building that relationship, because, you know, at some point things are going to go down, or at some point they're going to go up, and one of us is going to end up at a eye level, either by me going down or by them coming up. And so you want to have a great relationship with that person. And so that was one of the things. And the second things that I feel like I didn't do very well was diversifying my money, which is something that I do well now. Being in real estate, whether it's, you know, private equity, investing in companies, stocks. I did save pretty good, but I really wish I would have invested a lot more at that time, as as much as I do now, because I was just been further ahead.
Well, 100%. I think it's important to know, especially when people are successful and then you're kind of moving up, not to be complacent, to think that you don't need anyone's support, or you feel like
Yeah,
you don't need other relationships, to like obviously stay connected with people,
yeah,
and not feel like you're like in this bubble of your own.
right.
And in terms of this investment, I think that's smart. I mean, I think you are smarter as you continue to like have success, where now you're actually investing, and
Yeah,
saving money. But yeah, I agree. I mean, it's tough when sometimes when you have all this success,
yeah.
it's harder to kind of think forward when it's like you're thinking about the present.
Yeah, one of the things that really got to me, I can't remember who said it. I want to say it was Troy Carter, but I'm not for sure. But he said that his biggest mistake and his biggest lesson was that he didn't take every dollar he made from music and put it into real estate. He
Mm,
felt like that was his biggest lesson. And so when I heard him say that, it made me start thinking like, wow, what am I investing in? You know what I mean?
right.
I'm just either spending money on frivolous things, or I'm putting it back into music.
Hmm.
But I need to diversify. I learned this lesson early, that, you know, artists don't last forever. And so I need to take heed to a lesson I already learned. And
Hmm.
so I wish I would have been just doing that at that time.
Yeah, I think that's important to know. And obviously, I realized this over time myself, to kind of create what they call passive income,
Yeah.
real estate. And obviously, we love music, but like I said, there's so many chances you can be successful at it.
Right, right. Yeah. I mean, you never know how long a run is going to last.
Hmm. No, 100%.
Mm.
So in terms of timeline, you're obviously successful at K Camp.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where's the turning point for you? So you have this production company, this label company.
Mm-hmm.
Do you invest in other artists? What's
Yeah.
happening there?
For the most part, all of my money was going to other artists. I signed this girl. We ended up doing a deal at Columbia with her.
Mhm.
I spent a good amount of money on her. And I've just always been investing into music. After me and K Camp, we ended up going our separate ways. After me and him ended up going our separate ways, I signed Q Money, from Cleveland, which is my first time working with an artist from Cleveland. And we built him up really good. He ended up doing a deal at Warner Brothers. But that ended up ending it with him, you know, being incarcerated.
Uh,
Um, and so at that point, that's when I decided that I wanted to just see the inside of the label. I'm like, you know, I think this is a good opportunity. I know for sure anybody would hire me. I mean, my relationships are phenomenal. So I'm
mhm.
like, let me just at least build this other form of income, and then B, take a look at the other side and see what I'm missing. Because again, breaking artists is very rare. And so I've had successful artists. I had Camp, before him I
Mhm.
had Joker, and even Q Money reached a great level of success. Um, but I'm like, I really want to know more. I want to be a master at this. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, let me get inside. And it was the lessons I've learned inside of the label,
Yeah,
and it's insane, because even with my partnership with Interscope, there's so many things they didn't give me access to.
right.
That even once I found out that these things existed, I was
Yeah.
like, this wasn't a partnership. Yeah, it was a partnership. Y'all would have been put me on game about all this stuff back then. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
phenomenal to see the other side of it, the larger side of the commercial side of the
Mhm.
business, versus, you know, my whole time being independent.
Yeah, I think there's never a shortage of learning, I think.
Yeah,
learning the infrastructure, like the flow of communication, how things work internally, and how the labels just really, break artists on a massive scale.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know how to do things on a ground level. Me coming also from the independent space, but it's really good to see how those two perspectives come in,
Yeah.
and kind of using that as
Yeah.
your approach to marketing and breaking artists going forward.
Right.
That's super key. So now you're in this position, right? We didn't really get to dive into it. So you're head of sales and revenue at Alamo.
Mhm.
You also manage Jacob Lattimore. What's your approach to, obviously, the way that you've built relationships with some of these DSPs, but also like kind of managing that between your kind of day to day with working with Jacob? Like, what's that like
Um,
as a music
well,
executive?
I was very fortunate to land in this role
Mhm.
because it's not a very time consuming role. My job is pure relationships, and there's only a few key people at each DSP. You know what I
Right.
mean? You have your label rep, you have your marketers, and you have your editorial staff. And
Mhm.
so at Spotify, I really only interface with about 5 to 6 people. And I handle 6 DSPs. So let's just do some math. Let's say if I'm interfacing with 5 at each one, that's
Mhm.
30 people. And so my job is to communicate with these same 30 people week over week. And honestly, it just doesn't take that much communication. I'm speaking to them 2 to 3 times a week. I'm sending email correspondence 2 times a week. And so it's just not a very time consuming thing. It's really all about having a strong relationship because they're always going to give those important things to the people who they like the most, or the people who represent the better artists, and people who are their friends, and some of these people I consider family. Like some of them are okay, we're friends and we're cool, and some of
Mhm.
them are like we're family. Like if you leave this job tomorrow, we're still going to talk all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's really, if you can imagine, just keeping in touch with your family.
Mhm.
It feels more like that than anything.
I agree. I
Um,
feel the same way.
yeah, it feels more like that than anything. So, um, I was fortunate to end in this role because I did have other offers to be A&Rs at some other major labels. But my lawyer actually convinced me that this would be a better role for me.
Mhm.
And I agreed with him and took the role.
Yeah, and I'm sure you learned a lot, especially on that side of things in terms of like commerce and consumption.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, absolutely. And just more so, just learning the data. Interscope trained me for this role. Like I said, I had the relationships, but that doesn't mean that I knew how people were doing their job. You know what I mean? Just because I'm friends with Drew doesn't mean I know how to digital market. You know what I mean? So
right.
and so I had to learn how these guys were doing their job.
Mhm.
Interscope trained me up on that the first couple of months, and I really dove hard into like all the different apps and data and what each piece of data means in the lingo. But once I came out of that training, I realized that what mattered most was the relationship. Like that's what matters most. So all this stuff is good to know, and it's good, key points to point out. But at the end of the day, is this
How the
my
relationship.
at the end of the day, that's really what the job is.
Right. No, 100%. And we've said this, and even in the beginning of the conversation, like this is such a relationship based business that
Yeah,
we have to manage it, regardless of like as we obviously scale in our career and as we become more successful, we kind of like
yeah,
climb that ladder. Even in my position, like now, I've seen a lot of friends really just kind of start as like entry level positions, but now they're like directors, and being able to recognize their success early
yeah,
is important, and their importance. And that's why I feel like it doesn't matter what position you are, whether you're like an intern at a marketing media, like your contribution is valued.
yeah.
Like you just
Yeah,
never know.
I know plenty of interns who hold positions at label now as A&Rs or production managers. Some even executive positions. One of my closest friends, she started as an executive assistant. She's now like the uh, global head at Capital or some. I don't know her exact position, but I mean I've seen people
Crazy.
from the bottom to the top.
Hmm. No, 100%.
Yeah,
So I want to point that out too. And then also too, just for like our young managers or managers that work with artists from the community, what's that like? Because obviously I also manage artists as well. Well, he's a
Mhm.
songwriter. But what's your kind of take in managing artists? Because you've worked with artists for over 10 years. What's
Yeah,
that
I
approach
mean,
like?
artists are they're human, so they're complicated. You know, one of the things about this industry and management in particular is you're dealing with someone's emotions. If they have a bad day, you're probably not going to get a lot of things done. So a lot of times it's just managing moods. And then after you get past that,
Lesson.
yeah,
Managing moods. That's a
manage
lesson learned.
yeah. After you get past that,
Mhm.
my key thing is I like to be organized. I like to know our plans and what we're going after, our goals, and how do we reach those goals.
Right.
Handling our budgets. I'm very I have a great ear, so I'm very much in tune with my artist music. Some managers aren't, and that's fine. But me, I'm very in tune with the music. I help make the music. And I mainly just keep organized. You know, our release dates, our timelines, our rollouts, our marketing plans. I mean, really everything. And my approach to management is kind of simple. I mean, I really just wake up every day and think, okay, what needs to get done, and what can we do creatively to move us forward. It really just starts with that.
That's super important. I feel like yeah, everyone has a different management style, but I kind of, for me, I feel like, you have to one manage the moods.
Yeah,
Um, you can't really approach your communication the same every day. You have to kind of measure how
yeah.
their vibe is like.
Sometimes it's not the best time to ask that question. Like, okay, I'm gonna wait a little while before I present this. He's not
Yes.
in a great mood, or
Mhm.
he's in a great mood. This would be a time to throw this out there. You know what I mean? And yeah, I mean that's it for the most part. Finding those opportunities for them, managing expectations, because obviously artists have
Key
big
lesson.
expectations.
Mhm.
But I think when you build out sort of like a 3 to a year long rollout, it's quite easy to manage expectations because you're already showing them that this isn't going to happen tomorrow. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so that's why I like to just build out for a year if I can. You know what I mean? Like, okay,
Right.
we got album coming here, EP here, album in this month. So that way they're already knowing this isn't happening tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, I got this project, then that project, and that project. So they're looking at it as stepping stones versus looking at it like, oh, this record finna take us up out of here. Because that might most likely not be the case. You know what I'm saying?
100%. I've definitely seen that. I think that's super smart to really look at your timeline, your roadmap, 12
Yeah,
months ahead. Because I mean, there's a lot of artists. Obviously, if they, let's say they haven't released a record in a while, they may feel like this might be the record to break them.
yeah,
But knowing how the marketplace is, you know, people's attention spans um, change daily.
right.
So your lately could be an afterthought next week.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
time, for example, 6 months can feel like an eternity for an artist that hasn't released a record.
Yeah,
So I think it's important to really have stepping stones for artists that are coming back in the cycle where they're like actually building into an album, with multiple releases versus like, hey, I'm gonna put this big album out, but I haven't been actually in cycle or releasing music for a year, you know.
right. Right. I mean, the key is consistency and perseverance. Those are probably the two key things you need to even begin and try to make a dent.
No, 100%. But yeah, man, this has been amazing, man. To honestly just because I know we had a conversation when we were in LA. I was like, yo, JR, I gotta get you on the L's podcast.
Yeah.
Quarantine edition.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so we always ask, we've talked about multiple lessons, through this conversation. Maybe we can talk about uh from two perspectives.
Hmm.
One, what's your biggest lesson learned as an entrepreneur? And then also two, what's your biggest lesson as a manager? Um, so I think there's two sides to that, obviously on the artist side and more so on the business side.
Okay. So my biggest lesson as an entrepreneur, I don't know. The first thing that comes to mind is trial and error, meaning
Hmm.
when it comes to spending money. Like I used to be very um I used to jump fast. Like I learned about a way. Like let's say I learned that you can get playlisting on Spotify through third party playlisting. I used to be the type of person that would say, okay, bam, dump 10,000 into that. You know what I mean? Let's see how it goes. You know what I mean? That's probably gonna be the lick. But now I'm the type of person where I'll test it first. Or put 1,000 in. Let me know how that 1,000 does. If that 1,000 does good, we'll put in another 1,000. If that 1,000 doesn't do good, we didn't lose 10,000. We only lost 1,000. So that's probably one of the key things that come to mind is just always trial and error everything when it comes to spending money. Never dump money into anything believing that it's gonna be magic. You got to test it and see. So yeah, definitely trial and error with your money.
That's important. So I think to your note, instead of spending 10,000, maybe put like 500 or
Yeah,
1,000 to something new, with actually testing it out without fully
yeah,
going into the investment. But yeah, and then that's a great lesson. And then in terms of just being in the managerial role,
mhm,
working with an artist, and that also goes hand in hand with being a label exec. They're
yeah.
very similar. You know, being a manager and also a label exec, they kind of go hand in hand.
They're similar. I mean, the key difference is just the manager isn't supposed to spend money. Once you start spending money and investing into the artist, you're the label. I mean, that's the biggest key difference. So if you're investing into the artist, you should
Mhm.
just go ahead and get your paperwork together and become a label and sign them versus just being their manager.
I think that's a good point. That's a good point. Multiple lessons through this story, man. I mean, I know the Digilogue community is super obviously excited to hear this podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat on the Sunday,
Yeah, man.
sharing your journey. Shout out to the community, the Digilogue community, for always supporting. This is episode 5 of the L's, AK
Yes,
Lessons Learned with J.R. McKee,
yes,
music
sir.
executive, also a good friend of mine, and super excited to get your feedback on this. But JR, thank you so much for being part of this.
No, man. Thank you, Drew. Thank you to the community.
Yes,
Also,
sir.
I do want to point out I just started a platform called the Shared Information. It's the shared info on all social media platforms. And so basically, what we're going to be doing is just holding open conversations about the business of entertainment. Because a
Nice.
lot of people right now have their source of incomes have been diluted all the way down to just music streaming because they can no longer go out and get syncs. They can no longer go out and do shows. And so pretty much six out of the 7 forms of income have been cut, and it's not only music streaming. So I want to just jump into that and figure out how we can help people get those
Yes.
streams up and help them become a brand so that they can move product during these times. So if anybody's interested in becoming a part of that community and that platform, please don't be afraid to hit us up. We started a Slack group, so you can get in there
Nice.
and just jump into the conversation.
Yeah, and we're gonna put all that information in the description, so
Yeah,
you guys have access to that, and we'll also share that in the socials. But yeah, like I said, we're in an interesting time. So what
yeah,
JR is offering is, obviously just more knowledge for more multiple
yeah.
revenue.
Definitely more insight, man. We're gonna be doing some Zooms and some master classes just to
Nice.
provide insight to execs, managers, artists at this time.
Yeah, man. Information is everything at this point. But
Yeah,
JR, appreciate you, brother. Thank you
no
so much for
doubt,
being part of
man.
the L's and
Yeah.
Digital community. I'll see you guys for episode 6. See you guys soon.